It's called How to Accomplish Big Things Even When You Feel Small. And the first step is actually getting yourself to believe it's not only possible, but that it's normal. And what you have to do is, what I call it is reconstructing reality. I started listening to audiobooks and podcasts 4 to 8 hours a day. So I listened to things like, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Christopher Reeve. I listened to things of people who had dealt with disabilities that had accomplished incredible things. And I found any podcast with inspirational stories. And my goal was to spend more time listening to those things than I spent actually in my own life.
Wow.
The reason why that was my goal is I think that if you spend the majority of your time in worlds where people are accomplishing incredible things, all of a sudden, that started to seem normal to me because I'd spent more time listening to people who had done incredible things than in my current life where it looked impossible. And it trained my brain to believe that it wasn't difficult because there were all of these other people who had already done it. And I spent so much time listening to it that it became normal. I started to hold myself to their standards. You marinate a piece of meat. I was marinating my mind in incredibly inspirational stuff. Now there are so many amazing podcasts like yours. So even the listeners listening to your podcast, if you're going through an extremely difficult time, try to spend more time listening to inspirational stories than you do dealing with negative stuff. And even if you're working, like when you're going to work, when you're at lunch, have earphones in your ears and be listening. Don't spend any time with negative people. And when you do that, your perspective will shift. You will start to believe that you can do some of those things. And I believe that's the first step to sort of getting yourself into the position to where then you can take those steps. Because if you don't believe it's possible for you, you'll never do it, right? So what I deliberately did when I got started is I brainwashed myself into believing that these things were normal, everyday, commonplace. So the second step is then to find out what the price is of what you want. So this is the other big thing that I realized. When I went to start a business, I also listened to biographies of successful business people. At the time, it was like Michael Dell, Richard Branson, people like that in 2010. And when I listened to their biographies, I wasn't interested in their business strategies. What I was interested in is what was the price that they had to pay. And I don't know where I learned this, but I learned it early on, that you can achieve anything you want, but there's always some sort of a price. And it's not always money. Usually it's some sort of sacrifice of your time. At the very least, like starting a business, you're sacrificing years of your life investing it in this business. A lot of people kind of call you a fool. A lot of the times they don't believe in you.
You get a lot of hate.
You get a lot of hate. You also deal with, especially when you start hiring employees, worrying about what happens if the business goes under, feeling responsible for everyone and everything all the time. Most entrepreneurs don't really sleep very well. So there are all of these sacrifices. And what I did in advance is I made a list of all of the sacrifices that I could see that they were making. And I asked myself, am I willing to go through that? But the point is, a lot of people are under the assumption that they can get whatever they want without trading something that they have. And that's just not the case. And I think whatever you want to achieve, and this can be business or anything else, look at what you have to trade to get there. decide in your mind, I'm willing to make that sacrifice. And there are even no guarantees. You could make that sacrifice and not get what you want, okay? You have to realize that too. You may struggle and fail. A lot of people do. But to go into that realizing, having a completely realistic picture of what you're getting into. So, I mean, when I started my own business, I knew that if I wanted to grow it rapidly, I was going to have to dedicate myself to it, heart, mind, and soul. I knew that I probably wasn't going to sleep well. I knew that I was going to have a ton of stress. And I accepted that, and I was willing to pay that price. And so that's what allowed me to move forward without hesitation.
And what would you say is step number 3?
So step number 3 is to put a gun to your head. And this is the most difficult one. So one of my favorite scenes of any movie of all time was Fight Club, where Brad Pitt, who was playing Tyler Durden, got a guy out of a convenience store, put a gun to his head, said, "What do you want to be in life?" He says, "Veterinarian." He said, "Well, that requires a lot of schooling, right?" He says, "Yeah, too much school. I couldn't do it." And he takes out his driver's license. He said, "All right, I have your driver's license. I have your address. I'm going to come back in 6 weeks. If you're not going forward to become a veterinarian, you'll be dead. I'll kill you." And he says, "All right, so run away." So the guy ran away. And he said, "Tomorrow will be the best day of his life." And I think it's true. Now, it's a very extreme example. I'm not suggesting anyone put any guns to anyone's heads or threaten anyone's life. But one of the things that I'm a huge fan of, once you've decided what the price is, set up negative reinforcement to get yourself to do it.
Like what?
Like, for example, for me, the reason why I was able to achieve everything I achieved, if I failed, I was going into a nursing home. That was the scariest thing imaginable to me.
That was the gun to your head.
That was the gun to my head. I had to do it. I didn't have a choice.
So for many people, they could say, well, I could decide tomorrow, but they could do that for 40 years. But they could sort of, the gun to their head in this case is, if I wait till tomorrow, I'm going to get on that slippery slope that lasts 40 years, and that's my life.
Yep. So, I mean, there are simple ways for things. So, like, one of the things I've heard of people doing, and this requires a lot of courage, and it sounds crazy, but I had a friend who took naked pictures of herself when she was trying to lose weight, gave them to a friend, and said, "If I don't lose 20 pounds within the next 6 months, I want you to post all of these naked photos of me where I'm fat on Facebook."
It kind of almost sounds like a business idea. Send us your fat, naked photos with a timeline.
There's a business called Stick, I think it is. Can't recall if it's STIKK.com, something like that. That is their business. Is they hold you accountable. It's terrifying, okay? Those types of things. But it will give you more energy and motivation than anything in the world. I mean, people ask, how did you do this? How did you start this business? I was absolutely, totally terrified of ending up in a nursing home someday. And that gave me endless energy and motivation. I was able to work harder. I mean, I worked like literally. When I moved down to Mexico, I didn't go down to the beach, even though I lived on the beach, for 6 months. I just stayed in the condo and I was working. Nobody even knew I lived there. I just stayed in the condo and I was working 16, 18, 20 hours a day.
And what's your end goal? Would you like to sell the business?